You're watching Newsfeed AM. Let's get into this conversation now. South Africa is in the midst of an energy crisis that not only impacts our economy, but has also caused loss to human life. Let's start with Phila Sandeyende. He was 13 years old, shot in the head, allegedly by police during an electricity protest. His family believes he would still be alive if the municipality had delivered services to residents. Unako Kwenana, she was 18. She died of lung failure when her oxygen tank ran out. And the appeal was that she wanted a solar-powered oxygen machine just to stay alive. And the youngest victim of load shedding is Nehemiah Eaton. She is 3, or should we say was 3 years old until Thursday, when she died in her mother's arms following a rare disorder from birth which caused her difficulty breathing. She had to rely on a backup oxygen cylinder. Well, this morning we asked the question, is there legal recourse for victims of power cuts? And we're joined by the Deputy Leader of Build One South Africa, Nobuntu Hlazo-Webster, and we are also joined by legal expert, Advocate Aubrey Sedupane. To both of you, thank you very much for joining us for this difficult conversation. Let me start with you, Nobuntu. You, the leader of your organization, opened a case against government yesterday. Just give us a quick summary of what your legal argument is going to be in court.
So our legal arguments, thank you very much, first of all, for having us today and for having this discussion, which you've already alluded to being a really difficult discussion. Our position and our argument in court is about the violation of human rights. It's what it always has been. You may remember that earlier this month we secured with a collective a court ruling against Eskom, where the court ruled that Eskom needs to ensure uninterrupted power supply to hospitals, police station, and educational institutions. Even then, our argument was that of human rights violations. We have a situation now where a family has lost their child. We're in communication with the family. It is really, really, really difficult to even engage with them because this is a human rights violation, and it is a loss of life that has come directly as a result of not having access to power, outages that lasted for days. Yeah. And the truth of the matter is that it is a human rights violation. And so that is the argument. And this is not the only case. You know, we've been chatting to councillors, we've been speaking to people, and this is not the only case. And so you have to give voice and you have to fight for justice for what is happening, because this is not the first time that this is happening.
Yeah. Advocate Sedupane, let's come to you. How easy or difficult is it going to be for organizations like Build One South Africa, at least in my mind, a clear-cut case of the little Nehemiah Eaton? She was just 3 years old. The parents had backup power. That failed because of the prolonged load shedding. And I also think of Unako Kwenana, who was 18. She died of lung failure. She solely relied on an oxygen tank to breathe. And she was asking for one that could possibly be powered by solar, so that whenever there is load shedding, she doesn't have to suffer. Just those two cases alone, could there be some success legally?
Yeah, thank you very much, Cody. I think I must just start by indicating that this aspect of electricity supply is really not an easy one for the entire country. It is also very imperative that we look into the aspect, as my sister there has already alluded to, issues of the promotion and protection of human rights. Notwithstanding that, hence I made reference to the challenges that we have as a country when it comes to electricity itself. The matter that my sister has referred to, when you look into it, it focuses more so on entities that are providing a particular service. So for example, hospitals, clinics, and so forth. The key question then is that when we exempt them from electricity reduction or load shedding, what happens to people who are sitting at home? For argument's sake, if these particular two kids were at home and the parents really took an extra mile to try and ensure that there is enough supply of electricity for their children. In that regard, there's still that particular challenge to say, how do we reduce electricity and exempting certain specific households? It's going to be very difficult. But at the end of the day, the key issue here really is about the provision or supply of electricity by Eskom itself as an organ of state, which has got a monopoly, so to say, around the provision of the electricity. So given the challenges really that we have had, I would say that when we assess our right to life, when we assess the right to dignity of our patients in hospitals, even at home, there is really a possibility of having possible remedies that can be put forward by our judiciary to say, in this particular instance, really particular rights were violated. And I do agree that some rights were violated, but it is only a question of really coming up with the principle of causation to say, how do we link the conduct of Eskom to the ultimate result? In other words, the deaths of these particular kids. Was it a wrongful act to start with? So, yeah, those are delictual aspects that we need to look into. But because we are dealing with fundamental constitutional rights, the delictual aspects would have to be set aside as well, so that we focus mainly on these particular rights and say, notwithstanding the fact that there might not even be wrongful conduct, given the essential need really to reduce electricity at this particular juncture. But how do we counter the negative effect on especially the sickly?
Let's come to you, Ms. Hlazo-Webster, and I'm interested to know whether there is a moral duty on the part of government to say when there is now clear evidence of loss of life as a direct result of load shedding. We saw at the beginning of this month, I think to be exact, it was on the 5th of May, when the High Court in Pretoria issued that judgment which gave government 60 days within which to exempt certain institutions. And the Minister of Public Enterprises, as I think your organization has said, he wasted no time but to rush to court in order to appeal. I'm asking the question as to whether there is any sense of moral duty on the part of this government to try and at least give a semblance that they care.
There is absolutely a moral duty, but as you say, when that court ruling was given by the High Court, the response of the government was to appeal it. And, you know, that gives the sense that government is not even willing to make an attempt or even an articulation of a willingness to address the issue. And that really is what we're facing now. We have a government that's unwilling to make sure that these fundamental human rights are met. We have a government that's unwilling, you know, to even admit that there are violations that are taking place, to even admit that there is a need to meet those moral obligations. So that really, really is the problem that we find out. This is why we end up in courts. This is why we end up having to do this via court, because it's very clear that on their own, this government is not willing to put South Africans first. This government is not even moved by the loss of life. The loss of a 3-year-old. We've had the minister respond even already now to our case, which we laid yesterday already, in a similar response that really just rejects what we are doing and doesn't take any responsibility at all for what's taking place. So we end up at the courts, and we end up having to fight in that way for human rights, because we have a government that is not willing to have or to take on the moral obligation to look after South Africa.
Before I move on to Advocate Sedupane, let me ask you the question as to what is it that you are going to present before court so that you have a winnable case. And I'm asking you this question well aware that you are a political entity. By the way, just to tell the viewers that I did try, along with the team, to invite the ANC into this conversation. Unfortunately, we did not get a positive response. And so the question is this a political gimmick from your part? Because we know that there are elections coming next year. Or is it something that you truly believe in?
So, in taking this step and in opening this case, we have consulted with lawyers, we have legal representation, and we're convinced and we're sure that this is a case that has legal merit, first of all. We have to say that. But secondly, we represent people. We represent South Africans. We are South Africans. I'm a mother. I'm a mother who actually has a son who a few weeks back was sick and had asthma, and I had to speak to a friend about going and nebulizing him at a friend's place. So I'm first of all a South African. We're first of all South Africans, but we also represent South Africans. We talk to South Africans, and we do what South Africans would have us do in representing them and making sure that their rights are stood for. Is this a political gimmick? That's an easy thing to say, but you have facts on the table that human rights have been violated. You have the voices of South Africans who say we want to fight this and we can't live like this.
Let's come to you, Advocate Sedupane. I'm looking at the number of cases now that at least are building up. Could there be a class action lawsuit against government here that could potentially come to fruition?
No, certainly, Xoli, if we look at it from that particular perspective, really load shedding is costing us way too much to a point of human cost. Which is something that we should really avoid. So certainly if BOSA already having taken whatever legal action that it has, hopefully it has considered other cases that we are not aware of ourselves, so that then there can be that particular grouping of certain specific individuals, so that we show the negative impact. We are already aware of the negative impact, but the effect of the matter is that we are not aware of other existing cases out there. Some are even maybe deliberately not disclosed, even in hospitals. If people die because of load shedding, we might not even be knowing. So this is very imperative that we really look specifically now at this particular juncture into the causes of death of our people in hospitals specifically.
Yeah. A final question to you, Ms. Hlazo-Webster. So we are at this junction now where government has made it clear that they are going to appeal the ruling which gave them 60 days at least to exempt public institutions, whether you talk police stations, hospitals, I think including schools there. With that kind of attitude from government, where to from here? For people of South Africa, you've already taken up one case, and I believe it is the little Nehemiah Eaton's one. And if there are more people, as the advocate suggests, that could possibly be dying in hospitals, and this is kept secret because people want to shield this government from accountability, where do those people turn to? Because some of them actually don't have money to even take matters to court.
So that's the reality, and that's why, the first court which we did, which was a ESCOM court ruling, that was done collectively with a number of organizations, with a number of other political parties and civil society organizations and individuals who are South Africans. We are willing to take this as far as we have to take it to make sure that, first of all, there's justice that's served, but also to make sure that we are ensuring South Africans actually are fought for in this moment. And we're ensuring that we are fighting a cause and a case where we'll be able to say at some point, because the court has ruled, because the judiciary has ruled, we are able to have the fundamental human rights of South Africans' health, education, safety met. We are taking this as far as we can. And as BOSA, we welcome anybody who wants to come to us and say, look, we need help. Look, we want to have our story brought. We want to have a case opened as well. And as the advocate has said, where there is possibility for class action, we'll be part of that. We'll lead that. As BOSA.
All right, let me thank you both for your time. That is Nobuntu Hlazo-Webster. She is from the One Build South Africa organization. We also have the advocate Aubrey Sedupane, a legal expert there. Thank you very much for your time. Still to come, the markets update with the head of equity research at FNB Wealth and Investments, Chantal Marks. That conversation in a moment. You're watching Newsfeed, the AM edition.